What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are back with Iron Man as part of Fall of X. And as always, you will find a link to the Fall of X playlist at the end of this video so you can get caught up on everything. But we pick up here with Iron Man and Emma Frost on a honeymoon. Don't worry, it gets amazing here in a second. But for those of you guys who are getting caught up here, the long and short of it is that, as most of you know from Fall of X, the X-Men are basically being hunted down, really all mutants are being hunted down, attacked by the human population pretty much anywhere they can find them. Emma Frost is basically masquerading as a chick named Hazel, who's now the wife of Tony Stark, which is just one great big huge ruse, but it allows her to operate in the public eye without anybody being the wiser as to who she actually is. But once the two of them just kind of finish doing their thing, right? Like Iron Man surfing, she's like drinking Mai Tais on the beach. He walks back into the hotel room and she's like, "Are you ready to get it on?" Which is probably like the one thing he wanted to hear the most from Emma Frost, only to be disappointed and find out she's just talking about the mission. So one of the cool things here, right? This is the awesome aspect of this, and we covered this in the last video. They're hunting for Mysterium. Well, specifically, she already knows where it is, but Iron Man is looking for it because he's looking to build the Mark 72, a new Iron Man suit, based off of this Mysterium metal. We'll find out exactly how capable this metal is over the course of this video, and it's gonna blow your mind. But using the nil armor, which is really more of like a espionage spy armor, it can make him invisible. It's really more designed for getting in and out of places as opposed to like a weaponized suit of armor. Using that, he ends up traveling to Krakoa. Now, the cool thing is that once he gets there, a lot of the continuity of what we've seen so far remains intact, in the sense that in the Iron Man comics, Fei Long is very much anti-mutant, really for the dumbest reason imaginable, right? Like, his parents had powers, he didn't have powers, and he's been pissed off about it ever since. But the thing about this is that he stole Iron Man's company and then used Stark Tech to build these giant sentinels, which are still guarding the entire island of Krakoa, the former home of the mutant population on Earth. And so Iron Man sneaking in here is really just based on the fact that the nil armor, of course, is far more advanced than the traditional sentinels and even the Iron Man or the Stark Tech sentinels that Fei Long's using, just because Tony Stark knows exactly what technology is being used here, right? I mean, the guy, in effect, built the whole thing. And so because of this, as he sneaks in, one of the cool things that goes on here is that Emma Frost is able to see everything through these glasses that she's wearing, right? Like, she sees what Iron Man sees. So they're basically cameras. And as he's making his way through here, one of the things we find out is that Orcus, the organization hunting down mutants all over the world, that they have super-powered apes. No, it's not Gorilla Grodd, but it is still kind of cool, all right? So here's the thing. Once Iron Man is kind of guided to the room of Emma Frost, which looks every bit as cold as you would expect it to, it's the least inviting space that I think I've ever seen in my life. She tells him exactly where to go, right? Like, there's a chest, it's got these thigh-high boots that are sitting on top of it. Once you crack the chest open, the Mysterium metal, if it hasn't been stolen, will be available, right? You'll see it there. The crazy thing about this is that this gorilla immediately attacks. Now, it's not as though it perfectly saw Iron Man. Instead, the way it explains this, right? It says that Fei Long tuned our satellites to find a new element, and an anomalous reading on a satellite spectrometer brought me here. I didn't expect to find you. Where is the White Queen, Iron Man? So essentially, Tony Stark and Emma Frost are not the only ones who know about Mysterium. Now, I would go so far as to wager that while Mysterium is being introduced within the confines of this story for the purpose of building an Iron Man suit, this will become a much bigger thing later on down the line within Marvel Comics, and that it may end up turning into some kind of like a space race for this Mysterium metal. I don't definitively know that. That's just kind of my guess here. But of course, as you would expect in traditional Iron Man fashion, he starts cracking jokes. When the giant ape says like, "No japes," of course you gotta make a joke, right? Like, no japes for apes. Like, you gotta say something. You can't just let that slide. But while like Iron Man is basically getting trashed by this monkey, Emma Frost is just kind of watching through her glasses, drinking some wine, and is just kind of like, "I told you this would be a disaster, Tony. I told you it was a bad idea," right? They've got multiple PhDs. That's how smart this monkey is, right? Multiple PhDs. Now, of course, once Iron Man tries to lie and say like, "I'm not actually Tony Stark," that kind of thing, anything. It's really more just buying time, right? Like creating a ruse, so on and so forth. He is ultimately able to overcome it by like blasting the ceiling, which brings the whole thing crashing down on this ape and ultimately kills him. But following that, he gets to the chest, and when he cracks it open, it's literally a line. It's like a scene out of Pulp Fiction, right? Like, yeah, we're happy. Opening the briefcase and just seeing it glow and realizing that Marcellus Wallace has his soul back. So here's the thing, right? Once they leave, or once he starts to leave, this is one of the coolest aspects of the story. It's not a gigantic moment, but it is a great reference. And this is why I love tie-ins for like major events. What he does is he says, I only had boots on the ground for a few minutes on the island, but I was left with the strangest sensation that I was not alone. And the reality is, he's not. He's being watched. And in fact, he's actually being protected. Charles Xavier basically is the reason why nobody saw him there, right? Because the reality here is that if these satellites that orbit Earth and controlled by Fei Long are being adjusted at a frequency that's constantly trying to find the nil armor, and then potentially even located the exact frequency, which would basically nullify the invisibility of the suit, that while he is still technically invisible, while he's making his way through, these guys should have picked up on it, right? Sounds or any number of things. But the fact that Charles Xavier was there, basically he uses telepathy to keep these guys from realizing that Iron Man was present. Now, that ties into the Immortal X-Men comic, which we also have in the Fall of X playlist. Xavier's just like the one guy who won't leave Krakoa. He's there the whole time. And in fact, things are going sideways pretty fast for his character. I'm really interested to see where that goes, to be honest. But following that, once he gets back to the Hellfire Club, kind of the base of operations where he and Emma Frost and Kingpin and this kind of anti-Orcus resistance where they're all operating out of, then of course he activates his kind of like room, right? His workshop, if you want to call it that, which really just looks like an S&M room if we're being honest with ourselves. And what has happened here is that specifically he's had his machines building a cane using this Mysterium armor. Now, of course, using a cane, it's very non-conspicuous, right? Like Tony Stark walking around with a cane, nobody's gonna bat an eye. If he's walking around in like a giant metal suit, people are gonna ask questions, you know what I mean? But what he wants to do is he wants to see how capable this Mysterium metal is. And I'm gonna tell you guys right now, building an Iron Man suit out of this metal is gonna be nuts. I would argue that it rivals true adamantium. Technically it doesn't, but I would argue that it does, right? Because the first person he takes it to is like Carol Danvers. And he's just like, break this in half. And she can't. She can't break it, right? Now, this is a chick who's almost on par with the Incredible Hulk. I say almost on par because during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, and like one of the best moments ever, like she's fighting the Incredible Hulk, she just like lunges at him and just starts like wailing on him. And then like when the dust settles and the smoke clears, he's like, are you finished? And just like uppercuts her into the atmosphere. It's amazing. But she's still exceedingly strong. More so than virtually anybody out there outside of like maybe Thor, especially now that he's got the Thor Force, and like the Incredible Hulk, potentially one or two other people. But it is a smart decision to take it to her. She can't break it, right? It's seemingly indestructible. The next thing he does is he takes it to Doctor Strange and he says, use your magic on this, right? Like, do whatever you want with this. Destroy it, incinerate it, obliterate it, whatever it is that you can do. And Doctor Strange does exactly that. And he's literally just like, okay, I don't know what this is, right? He was like, I can't even cast a simple levitation spell on this cane. The spell I just hit it with should have atomized it, right? And so it's just one of those things where it's like magic does not affect this suit of armor. And so the next thing he does is he takes it to Spider-Man. And what he ends up doing is, as the two of them are talking, it's one of those really fun, it's a hilarious moment, right? Bear with me here for a second. It's hysterical, but there is a reason why he does this, right? So he was like, hello, Spider-Man. I was hoping my sinister signal wouldn't get your attention. And where Peter Parker and Iron Man have a little bit of back and forth banter, he says, I was hoping you could help me with a science experiment, right? Peter Parker is like ecstatic about this because it's Iron Man, right? Like, who wouldn't want to help Iron Man with some kind of experiment? He's like, you know, everyone seems to forget that I have a pretty robust and impressive science background. Everyone always asks you or Reed or Blue Marvel, Adam Brashear, because he's like one of the smartest people in the world. A lot of people don't know that, right? Blue Marvel, Doctor Doom, Valeria Richards, Reed Richards, they trade the top spot for like the smartest person in the Marvel Universe. We know that because of the Doctor Doom solo series for people who never read that comic book but are going to tell me that I'm wrong because I know what I'm talking about and they don't. But he says, nobody ever thinks of me as a science hero. What do I need to do? And so the response of Iron Man is, just close your eyes and I'll do the rest. Spider-Man's like, okay, gotcha. And Iron Man's like, are they closed? And Spider-Man's like, yep. And then he just cracks him in the leg with the cane. He's like, what the heck, man? He was like, wait a minute, my spider sense didn't see that coming. What is that? And that's when he realizes it can bypass Spider-Man's spider sense, right? So anybody out there that has either magical abilities, super strength, someone like Spider-Man whose spider sense warns him of impending danger, this metal can bypass all of it. It is the single most powerful metal that Iron Man has ever gotten his hands on to use for an Iron Man suit. So the question's gotta be asked. Once this suit gets made, which will likely be in the next comic, what's gonna happen? Because I'm excited to find out, which we will next month. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. They release it monthly, what do you want me to tell you? But make sure you guys click this link to the Fall of X playlist, and I will catch you all later. Peace.